USA's missed its last 7 shots.
Great ball.
Swinging into the corner. It's good. Haliburton knocks it down. 10 to shoot. Booker. To the corner again. It's another one. Haliburton.
He's not only a defender.
What is up, Pacers Nation? You are listening to the Pacers Post Up, brought to you by the brothers of basketball, Brad and Ryan. What a weird world we are living in, Pacers fans, as Tyrese Haliburton is getting lauded for, yes, his defense on Team USA. He also knocked down a couple of critical three-pointers to seal the exhibition against Australia. And we've got plenty of Summer League action to unpack in Las Vegas. Jarace Walker, Ben Sheppard, Johnny Furphy. It's all coming at you right here on the Pacers Post Up. All right, Pacers fans, we are back for yet another episode of the Pacers Post Up. Ryan and I are coming at you today. It's been a little while since our last episode, kind of just waiting for some of the dominoes to fall, if you will, in regards to NBA Summer League out in Las Vegas, and certainly following, the storyline of Tyrese Haliburton with Team USA. We had a USA-Canada showcase where we got to see Haliburton and Andrew Nembhard for a little bit of time. But we're really just going to sort of do a State of the Union on where we're at. Obviously, a lot to unpack. NBA Summer League. This has been a big Summer League, one that Chad Buchanan, Kevin Pritchard, Rick Carlisle have all kind of put the emphasis or importance on guys like Jarace Walker, Ben Sheppard, Johnny Furphy, as well as some other interesting storylines with Quentin Jackson, Oscar Tshiebwe, and some of the two-way guys that factor into the G League equation. So we're going to start there, dive into a little bit of Team USA. We'll recap the first 2 Summer League games. We've got 3 more to go out in Las Vegas. Ryan, Pacers are 0-2. So not that the Summer League is really about winning games. It's not necessarily about the end result. It's more about getting guys exposure and run and things like that. But I guess we'll start with the Brooklyn game on Friday and just sort of dive in there. What'd you like? We'll sort of talk about some of the returning guys, Sheppard, Walker, Tshiebwe, et cetera, and then what you saw from some rookies. Where are we at? Brooklyn, we lose in overtime. What did you see?
Yeah, I had to watch the game a day after, and you warned me a bit about the turnovers coming.
Yeah.
And the one thing you did fail to warn me on was the fouls, too.
Yeah.
I was watching it kind of on like a speed record where if there was a pause, I'd try to skip forward.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of pauses in the game to try to skip forward through. But that's what comes with Summer League. If you've ever watched in the past, it's always sloppy. I was actually looking right before this to see where we fell in the turnovers per game.
Yeah.
And we were actually in the top half.
Are you serious?
Which I don't even know how it's possible. We were only at like 16 and a half or something per game right now. And the Sixers were at like 22 and a half per game.
God. Wow.
And so this is how these go, but we were really just trying to dial in on a couple individual performances and see where it is. And the guy I think everybody's watching right now is Jarace to see how Walker's doing. And he's had up and downs, but so far you want your guys to flash in Summer League and really stand out on the court. And we've seen a lot of that. In this Brooklyn game specifically, it was kind of tale of 2 games with him. He was really more focused on the interior side of his game.
Yeah.
He took advantage of a lot of mismatches, which was nice. Used his size, was overpowered players, showed some of that vision flash we've seen. Hit a couple mid-range shots. The 3 wasn't there, but turned around in the second game and showed his defensive flashes. One area of concern or area improvement in this is his decision-making.
Yeah.
I think on this roster, they don't really have a true facilitator anywhere, like a real point guard.
Not in the Summer League.
Yeah, in the Summer League roster. Tristen Newton is probably the best, honestly, and he's coming off the bench right now. So Walker's being forced to do a lot of the playmaking, which is good because this is where you want to develop. But I think he's averaging somewhere close to 5 turnovers a game right now on 4 assists, which is not a great assist-to-turnover ratio.
Yeah.
But he's also, and not in a totally bad way, forcing the issue. I think he's trying to feed some passes that he's trying to get the offense going and probably not looks he would be usually making at that time. But overall, I've been pretty impressed. What about you?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I do see Jarace having the capability to run some point forward. There's been a lot of conversation, really since the end of the season when Chad Buchanan referenced him playing more at the 3 versus the 4 when we bring back Pascal and Obi, so finding him minutes in different ways. I do see him as having the skill set, the connector piece, the IQ, what have you. And he's shown flashes of it, like you said, where we've seen some passes. He had a little high-low game with Shibwe that was really impressive, taking advantage of the mismatches. When he plays point forward and they guard him with smaller guys, I think that's where he can exploit those. For me, it's about patience. What I saw in that first game, and the broadcasters talked about it, was Gennaro Pargo, who's our summer league coach, was going to try and run a higher pace, faster pace, up-tempo offense to give the guys on our team that project to be on the roster more of a feel of what we're going to do with the A club, so to speak. And frankly, rather than playing with urgency and pace, we just looked like we were sped up the entire game. And I think that's where we had 27 turnovers through 3 quarters. So and only like 1 in the fourth.
And OT,
yeah, which was kind of wild that we sort of got it together. But, yeah, there's no true point guard on this team. Quentin Jackson's not a point guard. Tristen Newton is, obviously coming off the bench, running point a little bit. So it did force Jarace. He had 7 of our team, I think 28 in that first game. And some sloppy – listen, there's some sloppy stuff. You have to remind yourself at times that this guy's 20 years old. And so that being said, the first game, he finishes with, I think, 23 points, a handful of rebounds, handful of assists. He did a little bit of everything, which was great to see. I did feel like at times, and this is not a shot at Quentin Jackson, but I felt like at times Jarace just got lost when he wasn't the primary ball handler. He wasn't necessarily getting looks. And I guess I'll transition to Ben Sheppard. I sort of felt the same way about Ben. Ben finishes that game 1 for 9. Looked phenomenal on defense as he does. And what I sort of kind of felt coming away from that about Sheppard, really in both games, is I think Sheppard kind of rises to the level of the group he's with. And unfortunately, this was a sloppy game, and he's not a shot creator. He doesn't have the Benedict Mathurin, put your head down, if you will. So it was an okay game for Ben. I thought he had some hustle plays and was clearly the best defender on the floor, either side. But it was, I guess, okay. An okay start for him. So I guess, the next guy on the list is Furphy. And I know you had some skepticism coming in. And we talked about this with TJ Leaf, how kind of when you saw him in Summer League, you almost knew he didn't have a fit. What is the eye test telling you about Johnny Furphy through, I guess we could talk about the other game too, through 2 games here.
I got some slack from some friends who watch more college basketball than I did, saying that I was totally off on what I was saying, and I was definitely pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this. Through the first half of the Brooklyn game, I was majorly concerned. He was getting beat on straight line drives. His shot was getting blocked. He hit his first one, and then his next 3 were like blocked or tipped.
Yeah.
And he was getting targeted on defense. And then he settled in a bit.
Yeah.
His release is quick, although it did get blocked even in the second game a few times. Some of those were late shot clock, but it's smooth. I mean, he finished with 12 and then I think 18 points in the second game. He showed... We talked a little bit about his lack of verticality.
Yeah.
And he had some nice finishes, oops, a transition dunk or 2 or 3 that went in. He played quicker. I liked his pace. He showed a little bit. He even had a nice little step back in there, some dribble moves.
Yeah.
He showed one thing that I didn't know he'd bring. And for a team that didn't have a lot of creators, he showed a lot of ball awareness of when to cut. Yeah. He was one of those guys who, when it seemed like somebody was getting trapped in the corner or Newton was somewhere, he was the one coming into the lane and finding that open crease. And so, who knows? I am pleasantly encouraged by what I saw.
Yeah.
I'm definitely way more encouraged than I was 2 weeks ago before I'd seen him play.
Right.
And so I could see him, barring something crazy, he is not somebody that's going to be in the rotation this year. But down the line, a 6'7" guy that can shoot. He's got to put on weight, but he's young enough where that still can fill out. And I'm encouraged. What about you?
I was very pleased, and I wasn't as low on him as you were. You know, the reports came out after the draft that the Pacers had him at 14 on the big board. That may be bullshit. I mean, you get these things that come out.
Always comes out.
Yeah, it's, you know, they said the same thing about Gogo. Well, we had him so much higher than where we took him at 18, 19, whatever it was. There's a reason Furphy dropped to 35, okay? You know, teams don't pass on a guy multiple times if there's not something else that we didn't see or hear. That being said, and I agree with a lot of what you said, almost everything of what you said, but the piece to me that I really appreciated, and maybe it's just summer league and guys are trying to chuck stuff up, but he shot 8 threes per game. And we have talked about the need for a volume shooter, the way that we pace and space, somebody that's willing to shoot and continue to shoot just to keep the defense honest. I like that he's a taller shooter. He's got a high release, pretty quick release. It did get blocked. I thought that was a little bit strange. You don't see that as much as I feel like I saw it with him. But 8 3-pointers a game. The first game he goes 3 for 8. Second he goes 2 for 8. The second game was frankly his better game scoring wise. You know, he had 18 points as you said. So, I mean, it definitely kept me wanting more. I mean, I was very intrigued by, you know, just what he. The potential that he could bring and the skill set that I think we need. And we haven't, you know, we got the Doug McDermott Band-Aid, but for all intents and purposes, Doug does not factor into the roster at this point in time. And so Furphy's going to sit in that 14th, 15th position. He's got a contract with the team. He's probably going to spend a lot of time in the G League. So I'm excited to see what he has the next couple of games, particularly if we do decide to sit Sheppard or Walker. We did that last year with Nembhard and Mathurin. So
Sheppard probably, wouldn't be surprised if he's gone next game even already.
There's no
Walker
benefit.
Probably 1 or 2 more, maybe.
Yeah.
They never, like you said, you saw this with Mathurin last year and with our guys. So we'll see. But Furphy would likely, it'll be Newton, Enrique Freeman. Those guys will get all the run later in the summer league.
I think you're dead on with Sheppard. Walker, we may see a little bit more. And the reason I say that is just from the second game, the Minnesota game was a much more physical game than the Nets game. And that I guess that's just who Minnesota is a little bit. And I thought Jarace really, now granted, he shot 5 of 11 from deep. So if it's working, you know, why go away from it? But I do feel like he settled a lot. 5'11" is great, but that was all his points. He didn't have anything from the line, no, points inside the 3-point line. I felt like it was a better turnover game, but he didn't do as much penetrating and aggression and things like that. So I'm going to guess through 2 games, the coaching staff and the front office is still wanting to see more from Jarace. I mean, do you think I'm right on that?
I think you're right. And because he played such limited games with us in the regular season, that makes more sense. Whereas like a Mathurin last year played almost every game, if not, I believe every game. Nembhard, yeah. I do think, and part of the reason I think on that Timberwolf games you allude is he needs some work on his handle too. Yeah. He's a little sloppy, so when he's trying to initiate, I think sometimes he has the reads, but he can't quite gather himself correct. And we saw that with a few of his turnovers as well. So I hope he gets an extended run. They were talking about Sheppard on the broadcast, and even Chad Buchanan in one of the interviews when he was on there said it's not something he'll likely star in because he doesn't have the playmakers around him. And truthfully, he doesn't need these reps per se. And you alluded, the defense is there. We know what he brings. He started in the Eastern Conference Finals, so his run is probably one more game. If not, maybe he's already gone, which is fine. I will say, Ben Sheppard went for 2 hammer dunks. I'd never seen something like that out of him. He got up, they were blocked, but I loved the attempt.
Ben Sheppard is an athlete. Yeah. I mean, he really is, and I want to see him be more aggressive like that. We've talked about that with Nesmith. Nesmith's had his fair share of rejections at the rim, but he's also had some punishing finishes. And so I think as Ben finds his role within this team, he needs to be more aggressive, particularly attacking closeouts, because you don't want to become one-dimensional. We talked about that probably 2 months ago on this podcast. And so I was encouraged to see that. Frankly, I thought Furphy did a good job of attacking some of those closeouts, and that was sort of instinctual, which is encouraging. Really from a Jarace perspective, I do want to talk about a couple of the other guys real quick before we move on to some of the, FIBA basketball. But I think Jarace sort of had a tale of two games where he didn't make a single three the first game, did all his work exploiting mismatches, getting to the rim, free throw line, etc., and then comes back and follows it up with a game where he shoots 11 shots from behind the arc and doesn't convert anything else. I think I'd love to see a game that's a little bit more of a blend of that, coupled with a real attention to locking up defensively and playing smarter defense, not necessarily, it's summer league, so there's always that itch to jump the passing lane, get the steal, let's get out on a fast break, etc., because the game is a little sloppier and there's probably more opportunities for that. But I think it's important for him to show something on that end of the floor because like Sheppard this year, I truly think that's how Jarace is going to earn minutes. This coaching staff has really made they haven't minced words. They've said that's what it's going to take, and they've stuck to that with the guys that are on the floor. So I hope we can see some of that. I think Jarace has at least one, if not two more games. And depending upon how those go, maybe he plays the full slate. I doubt it, but perhaps he does. I've got to ask, because just kind of shifting to some of the others, if you will, Oscar Tshiebwe and Enrique Freeman, our rookie 50th overall pick in the second round, seemingly are probably competing for a spot in this two-way deal. Through two games, they've both had really high highs. Where are you at with those guys? What have you seen, and who do you think is kind of leading that race, if you will?
I'd love to get a weigh-in on Oscar Tshiebwe because he just looks massive out there.
He does.
And this is not breaking news by any means. He's been a rebounder, and that's what he's done.
Yeah.
He's shown some flashes on defense that I've liked. He moves pretty well for his size.
Yeah.
His touch around the rim can be real tough at times.
Yeah.
Between him and Kendall Brown, man, some of the missed layups. But when he can get, he had some nice plays with Newton and with Jackson when they found him rolling. Even Walker had a few nice inside outs like you hinted at to him, where he finished really well. If I had to be on a who do you take, I probably, through these two games, lead Tshiebwe only because rebounding is a weakness on this team and probably something we need, although there was a point in the second game where Enrique hit an and 1-3, and I had to go back because I didn't even think it was him. It was such a smooth shot. That was not on his scouting report at all.
So I did a little more digging on Freeman. And I guess the word on him was that he added an outside shot late in his college career.
Okay.
That early on he was very much an interior player and knew that he needed to add that element to his game if he was going to translate to being an NBA player. So yes, it's not his forte, I don't think, but I do think he's tried to make a concerted effort to stretch his game out to that. It did look like a smooth shot. I mean, I love his activity. He's giving you a little bit of everything. He had I can't remember if it was game one or game two, but had an awesome transition block.
Yep.
Kind of coming from the backside, chase down block, which was really impressive. He's just kind of everywhere and seems to be, I don't want to say that, but kind of like a Ben Sheppard, just sort of going to do a little bit of everything in a different way. I know his focus, listen, Tshiebwe cleans up the glass better than anybody. I think he finished with 17 and 19 in that first game. I would give it to Tshiebwe too. I would, just from, we're talking about the G League Rookie of the Year. He has to get better on defense. He has to give you something offensively if you're ever going to really crack a rotation with him. But both of those guys have played well through two games. And so that'll be kind of interesting to see how that plays out. Those two, I think, will see the floor in every game, the rest of the slate here. And just fun to watch. You mentioned Kendall Brown. I think we got to touch on him real briefly. Kendall Brown had 19 points in the first game. I still don't like his game. He can't shoot. He really can't dribble or facilitate. You can see the athleticism. It's there. He beats guys off the dribble and gets to the rim, and it's like sometimes he just doesn't know what to do with his body. Do you think he's going to be cut? I know people are calling for that already, and it's, we're 2 games into summer league, but he's on the books for $2 million, non-guaranteed. We got to make a decision, I think, before training camp.
I've thought since we drafted 3 rookies, that spot would likely be out for him. I'm with you. When he's he's so good in transition when he's flying, but if he's handling the ball, you can see he's almost uncomfortable.
Yeah.
He can't make a read per se. His set shot is all right, kind of. If he's moving
he's
at
had
all,
1-3 through 2 games.
It just doesn't look very fluid. He can play defense. He fits athletically immediately. He's the most athletic player maybe out there on the court at times, if not always is.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to just hate on the guy. We cheer for all of these guys, but if I'm looking at this roster and trying to fill that last spot in two-way deals, I don't see a ton of room for him. I won't be upset if it's him.
Yeah.
But he did show flashes in the way we play with the pace and needing a guy who can defend and then play in transition. He does fit that. I just don't think his finesse and skills are ever going to be high enough to really, like you said with almost Shibwe, if he ever really wanted to crack a rotation, he's got to figure that out. And it just, when you watch him around the rim, I'm just like, oh.
Well, we're in year 3 with him, and I just we haven't really seen those things come around. And I guess if I put it to you this way, would you rather have him or James Johnson on the roster?
Oh, I like that question. I take James just because I think the players like him, the veteran leadership, and it depends on how much stake you maybe put in those things, but I think the guys would embrace him more.
Yeah, I agree. I think he gives you value. Neither of them are going to play.
No.
So then it comes down to who's going to add value to the rest of the group, and I think it's James, even though clearly he's well past his prime and may just be more of an intimidation force at this point. But we'll kind of put the bow on Summer League there. Anything else you want to touch on? We've got a game. Is it tomorrow? I can't remember when the next game. I think it's tomorrow. So we'll be watching the next couple of games. We'll certainly come at you with something there. Shifting our focus to the Olympics, FIBA, Team USA, a little bit of Canada. I haven't really followed their track a ton since the USA-Canada matchup. We've had 2 games now, and we've had training camp, highlights, things like that, different lineups that we've gotten to see. I guess we'll just talk about it as a collective rather than each game individually. There's just not enough there to really warrant it. And from a Haliburton perspective, Haliburton doesn't get the start. First game, it went, I believe it was Curry, LeBron, Booker, Embiid, and who am I missing?
It was Drew Holiday.
Drew Holiday, that's right, in the starting lineup. And then there was a change for the second game. Tatum came in for Booker, and Anthony Edwards came in for Holiday. So Tyrese has played off the bench both games. I guess just in short order, what have you seen from Tyrese? How do you think he's fitting? He's barely shooting the ball. I mean, is it sort of what we expected, I guess?
It is, and it's a similar role really to what he had with the World Cup team in this prior offseason where he came off the bench and really was just that facilitator. And just like his last run in FIBA hoops, when he comes in, the ball moves better. It's infectious with him. And his assist numbers, first game, had the game high, and in both games had that team high. I think it was plus 17 in the first game, plus 9 in the second game.
Was it the team high in the second game,
It was
too?
the team high in both plus minus, or box plus minuses. And I think that Kerr understands that maybe, I'm not going to blame him for starting Steph at that starting point guard. I mean, that's not a hometown thing. It's Steph Curry. He's one of the greatest and the greatest shooter ever. So I get it, but there is something, that second unit they've had, and I'm not sure why Kerr really doesn't want to start Anthony Edwards, because he tried to do this in the World Cup last year too, and he might be the best player he was on that team, and he might be on this team. They finally got him back in there. I guess it took only one game. But he
came out and had 11 points in the first, 4 minutes.
Good. So. He's so good. And he's a crowd favorite. Not that should play in. But I just love the way the second unit is able to play a little bit more free-flowing. And the first unit, LeBron's really the point guard of it, whichever one. And this isn't to hate. LeBron is one of the best playmakers, highest IQs. You can go on and on. But Tyrese just has a flow. And even in the second game, where he only had, I think, 2 or 3 assists, he set a few up in transition that just led to fouls and a couple hockey assists and got players. He got Bam in a couple spots right in that elbow jumper that he works so well out of. And it's fun to see him run pick and rolls as much as we do love Siakam and Turner. AD and Bam have a little bit different aspect where they can crash a little bit harder. And he just knows how to put guys in his spots. And no, he hasn't been looking for a shot. I think he took 4 in the first game, and were these 2 threes the only 2 shots he had in the game? He might have had
I think
one
he
other.
missed 1 3 in the first half. And those 2 threes were, frankly, we talked about it before jumping on here. Australia had actually cut it to 6.
With a look to cut it to 3 right before. So the game was getting hairy, for sure.
And Haliburton hits 2 in a row from the corner, and that kind of put it out of reach, essentially. I didn't know. I knew he had led the team in plus-minus in the first game. I was trying to look it up here and couldn't get to it, but you had it. Thankfully, in the second game, it doesn't surprise me. The offense does flow. It's more free flowing, to use the term that you kind of put. I gotta say this because in the first game, Haliburton was getting his hands in passing lanes. He had a number of steals. I forget what the total was. It 4 steals? Okay. Bill Raftery has been on the call for these 2 games, just like gushing about Haliburton's defense.
He got so lucky.
And so he literally, after the second 3 in the game today versus Australia, Raftery's line was, he's not just a defender. And I'm like, have you watched this guy ever play basketball? Because you're right, he's not a defender. He was absolutely our weakest link, like the entire season from a starter's perspective. So I thought that was really funny. Haliburton has, I think, done what, frankly, I've said for his entire career he's always done, which is cheat these passing lanes. Mm-hmm. And in a game like this, when you have such great help side defense at every position, you can get away with some of that a little bit more. Now, I'll give credit to Australia. The game today, they had a ton of set plays coming out of timeouts, whether it was underneath the basket or side outs. They beat us. Yeah. And Tyrese got beat a couple times getting back screened. And, I think it's par for the course. I'm not sitting here worried about it in any stretch of the imagination. But it's been fun to watch. Obviously looking forward to more of that. I think their next opponent is Serbia. They stay in Abu Dhabi for one more, and then they go to England to play South Sudan in another warm-up game. And then, end of the month is when it all kicks off. Real briefly, the USA-Canada game, Nembhard had, I thought, looked as good as you possibly could for not having any shots. Mm-hmm. Caitlin Cooper shared something that I sent to you, which was Nembhard's ball pressure, picking up full court. And I believe, I can't remember if it was on Curry first, then he got a switch onto Edwards. And he was basically forcing USA to like down under 10 seconds before they really initiated their offense just by picking up full court. I say that to lead into, we may not have another episode until he becomes extension eligible on July 22nd. Do we think, where are we at on the Andrew Nembhard extension meter from, is he going to do it? Is he not? Is he going to bet on himself? What is your gut telling you right now?
It's a coin flip, and not to just use a bailout answer like that. There's so many ways to look at it. We've covered his value, and it's a bet on himself or take the money now. And I don't know which way he's going to lean. I would have said coming into the season, if you offered him close to $18 million a year, he'd probably take it. Then you look at some of the contracts, and we've talked about like quickly getting 5 for $175, and you can argue he's probably a little better offensive player. He's not close defensively to what Nembhard brings. And, we'll have to see. I won't make a prediction either way. I just really hope we do sign the extension.
If he doesn't, he'll be the lowest paid player, at least he is right now, on the roster. We'll close with this because it's not Pacers news, but it is news that relates to the Pacers, and I want to touch on it briefly. We never see this happen. I'm going to start with this. We really, in the NBA, almost never see this happen. And the rival Knicks have agreed to an extension with Jalen Brunson that figures to be at least $100 million light on what he could have signed had he waited till the end of next year. Ryan, how do you wrap your mind around this? This wasn't even a discussion when it came to Pascal Siakam, and Brunson is apparently taking a hometown discount so that they can, push for a title. Where are we at? Are we going to see more of this? What does this set a new precedent for the league?
No, I don't think we'll see more of this because anybody could have done this. Anyone who's truly been, ring chasing over the years, a Paul George, any of these guys who have moved teams and all this could have taken this style deal and pay cuts. God knows they've made enough money, not to say it's their families, it's their generations. Get every penny you can, obviously. But I do think it is really cool that somebody just said, fuck it, I want to win. And I will actually put my money where my mouth is. I'm making plenty, which in his career, he'll end up making over $200 million, and he does commercials and all that. And living in New York, you get a lot of extra perks with the media and that. So I think it's really
also
cool.
Get whacked on your taxes.
Yeah, that's all true. The only thing I will say that I've seen, and I don't see this being a trend going forward. Maybe I'm wrong. I think it'd be cool if players took discounts, maybe a hometown deal one day in Indy. We'll see.
Yeah.
I did see that Bridges for the Knicks said he'll probably follow suit to try to keep the team together when his contract extension comes up. What does that mean, taking money out of his deal? I can't give you a ballpark number, but we don't like the Knicks. We don't like Brunson, but I will absolutely give credit where credit is due. If you're willing to take a nearly $100 million pay cut to win, that's pretty freaking cool.
If I'm a Knicks fan, this guy's won me over for life. I mean, you can't, you really can't put into words what that means. I mean, I think about my own, obviously very different financial situation from Brunson. That's significant. Yep. It really is significant, and it says a lot about who he is. And as much as I don't like you said, I don't like the Knicks, I don't like Brunson, I don't really like anybody on their roster, to be honest. You got to respect it, and that's going to fire up that fan base, and it's going to be fun. I mean, the East has loaded up. We're obviously paying attention to guys like Walker, Sheppard, Nembhard, Mathurin coming back from injury, and we'll be paying close attention here. USA is going to have another game. We'll have another couple Summer League games. We've got an episode in the works that's going to sort of be a surprise, a little bit off cadence, and that's all I'm going to say about that one. But we'll hopefully have that out here this week for you guys. Appreciate you listening as always. Ryan, anything else?
No, I would just say we went to Vegas in-season tournament this year. One year we should maybe try to go to Summer League. I think it'd be cool to bounce around these gyms in Vegas, and everybody's there. I mean, we saw Rick in chat. Miles is there. One of my buddies was in the World Series of Poker and said he walked by Edwards and Keegan Murray and all those guys. So I think it'd be a lot of fun.
They shut that city down for about 2 weeks, and it's all NBA basketball. I agree 100%. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Stay indoors. It's about 115 degrees out there, and that part's pretty brutal, but a lot of fun. The whole basketball world's there, and the attention's on that, and our attention will be on that too. And we'll certainly circle back here in a week or so on the final 3 games out in Las Vegas. So appreciate you guys listening. We'll get at you soon.